I think the take-home message is that not everything that looks like malignant hypothermia is it. Malignant hypothermia is not the end-all be-all. There's other things out there. We have to figure out what it is to try to help animal welfare.
Welcome to The Last Word, the official JAALAS podcast dedicated to connecting and informing the laboratory animal science community. Each episode takes a closer look at recent articles published in our journals, JAALAS and LAS Pro, and features interviews with professionals advancing the field. I'm Jennifer Smith, your host. As a laboratory animal veterinarian and the Director of Education and Scientific Affairs at JAALAS, I look forward to sharing these conversations with you. Let's discover something new together. Hello, with me today is Dr. James, or Jimmy, Corrigan, who is a highly accomplished colleague. James is currently with the Departments of Laboratory Animal Resources and Preventive Medicine and Biostatistics at the Uniformed Services University in Bethesda, Maryland. James has a wonderful background, and I am going to let him introduce you to all of that. But we are here today to talk about his recent JAALAS article titled The Incidence of Volatile Anesthesia, Porcine Stress Syndrome in Pigs Gives Implications for Physiology During Anesthesia. I'm so excited to talk about this paper and to introduce all of you to Jimmy. So, Jimmy, go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, Jenny. That was really nice of you to say. Hi, guys. My name is Jimmy Corrigan, and like Jenny said, I'm a lab animal veterinarian with the U.S. Army. I'm an assistant professor in the Preventive Medicine and Biostatistics Department at the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences, which is a big mouthful, but it's actually the military's medical school. So the military has one medical school in Bethesda, Maryland, and everybody in the uniformed services, so it's not just Army, but it's also Navy, Coast Guard, Public Health Service, Air Force, they all come in and they all learn how to become physicians. And there's a lot of research there, so they also have a lab animal medicine program for veterinarians, and that's what I did, and that's what got me to this publication, actually. So I just finished my residency a couple years ago, and I'm still here now for one more year as a oversight to try to help the new residents come along. Like I said, I'm an assistant professor, so I actually, my side hustle before becoming lab animal boarded was I really liked preventive medicine. So I got boarded in the American College of Veterinary Preventive Medicine, and I used that when I got an MPH here to become a professor and to teach people all about One Health, which is the intersection of animal health and human health and the environmental health. So talks about all the new diseases that come out and how we don't want to just fix it in humans, because if it comes from animals, then it's not going to fix the problem. And we also don't want to just focus on humans and animals, because if you ignore the environment, that plays a big role. But we're not here to talk about preventive medicine. We're here to talk about lab animal medicine, which is my real passion.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm going to interrupt you for a second and just say I just love your energy, and I love hearing just about your background so far already. And I really love that you kind of spelled out where in the Army and how that all fits in with veterinarians, because I think so many of us that are not military trained don't ever really know. So thank you for sharing that. All right, keep going. Tell us more.
No worries. It's kind of like fun too, because, as veterinarians, we all kind of have an inferiority complex about physicians, and they always think that they're so much better than us. So it's really fun for me to teach them, because some of them are getting MPHs, so they're already physicians, or they're physicians in training. If they're medical students, it's fun to me to be like, yes, I'm a veterinarian, and this is what I do. And they're all kind of like, wow.
Very cool. I love that. I love that part too. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, you took on a pretty interesting project, and I can see now by your really accomplished background in public health and One Health, I can see now how this all fit together with this project, but I won't steal your thunder. Tell us about the project. Why were you interested in this? And as well, we'd love for you to introduce us to your team. Who did what and how?
Of course. So I didn't actually set out trying to make this project. As you know, as an DACLAM boarded veterinarian, you have to do a project and become a first author. But this would not have counted because it was a case series, or case studies don't count. They have to be like an actual experiment. So this was just, I already used my Master's of Public Health paper, which had nothing to do with laboratory animal medicine, but it was hypothesis driven, so it counted. So I wasn't actually looking for another publication. I was just doing my normal job, my first year residency. I was in charge of the surgery department as well as the large animal department. And at the time, we had less animals here. So large animals only encompassed ferrets, rabbits, and mostly pigs. So a lot of the surgery involved pigs. They were like our biggest thing at this university. So I was constantly working with the pig researchers in the surgery suite. They all knew me and I knew them. So we had a good relationship. And then one day I was lifting weights in the gym on base, and I got a text message from one of the pig researchers. And he said, well, it was a picture actually. So if you read the article,
yes.
yeah,
The
that
picture.
Yep.
Yes. That picture made me really, I was like, wow, as like a previous anesthesia geek, I was like, that's a good picture.
Yeah, that I was surprised to see it. The person who sent it to me was John Mayers, who's my co-first author.
Okay.
So he sent that to me in the gym, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And he was like, yeah, this picture was taken 6 hours into surgery. His lab works a lot with long-term anesthesia with pigs, all about like cardiovascular, how to stop bleeding. Everything we do at the Universal Service University, it's all military and warfare related. So it's like how to stop people from bleeding out after they've been blown up by a bomb or shot by something or anything else war related. So they had this long thing where they were trying to figure out, okay, let me see if I can make sure I get this right. So he said, with this particular surgery, it involved opening the pig up, placing a novel shunt in the external iliac artery, and then measuring the distal blood flow for the next 24 hours while the pig's under anesthesia. So the whole point of it was try to increase survivability and recoverability from combat wounds during the immediate and early phases of injury. So instead of just putting a tourniquet on, which can cause problems later, they were like, what if we could introduce this like balloon catheter up into there, and then it wouldn't be external, it would be internal, and then maybe that'll give the people enough time to get to like a real hospital to be fixed. So that's what he was doing.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
So 6 hours into surgery, supposed to be 24 hours, the pig just started showing signs of malignant hypothermia. And that picture, you can see the limbs are just like sticking out in a rigid fashion, almost like the textbook picture. Or if you Google malignant hypothermia pig, you'll see like old images of pigs like that.
Yes.
But this is real time.
Yes, that's what struck me as I thought, when I was studying anesthesia, I hadn't seen a picture like that in a while. Yeah. So that was quite interesting.
It was really cool. So I was like, okay. And they were doing 2 pigs at once. So that was one of the pigs. And he's like, yeah, both of the pigs are showing like their heart rate's racing, their temperatures are spiking, they're breathing really high, they have like metabolic acidosis, like all the things that you would see that you learn about in your residency when they say, oh, learn about malignant hyperthermia. And I was like, oh, cool, let's go see if they have that.
Yeah. And in the back of your mind, as you were lifting weights, were you thinking, do we have any dantrolene?
No, I don't think I was even smart enough back then. This is my first year.
Yeah. Well, as an anesthesia person, that's always in the back of your mind, like, do we have that?
So, I wish I was that smart back then, Jenny.
No. Well, I can't even imagine getting a text like that. That would definitely be alarming for sure.
I put the weights down, went to go see him and see what was going on, see if I could help the pigs see what was happening. By the time I got there, they already had euthanized both of them. They reached temperatures of, one of them was 105.8 and one was 104.9.
Whew.
So they were getting too hot. Their blood pressure was lowering too, and they were getting to the point where they were just like, even though these pigs are under anesthesia and not supposed to be feeling anything, we're concerned about their welfare, so we're going to euthanize them. And here's the kicker, Jenny. So he told me, by the way, this is actually the 5th and 6th pig that this happened to in a row, and we just didn't tell you before that.
Oh boy.
I know, so
that is not what a lab animal vet wants to hear.
Yeah, so I said, okay, let's figure out what's happening to these pigs. Like, we just had 6 in a row, and when he was like, yeah, we're like scared to try to do any more. So we met with the producers like virtually, then they just blamed us basically. They're like, it's because you guys are doing such long surgeries. It's prolonged anesthesia, and we're like, this started happening 4 hours into it. The picture was 6, but they had data for all 6 previous pigs. And it was the 6 of them, about 4 hours into it, they would start showing these identical clinical signs. One of them even got up to 113.2 degrees before they euthanized him. Like they were just going, I guess her, because they were all females. Yeah, so they said, we'll send you some new pigs that are definitely unrelated, but we'll test all of our pigs for malignant hyperthermia to prove you that we don't have that. Because we were like, oh, we're probably saying that. And I thought maybe I can get a publication out of this because this is supposed to be eradicated. As everybody probably listening may know, but just some background, malignant hyperthermia was discovered in 1953, and it's so associated with porcine. It's called porcine stress syndrome. Like, it's really like the most famous, the only stress syndrome that most people know about is malignant hyperthermia. And it was supposed to be gone like decades ago because they developed a test for it in 1991. So they just basically screened all the herds that were used for research and for production purposes, like the pigs we eat. And they were like, okay, if they have this, it messes up the welfare, but also messes up the meat. So there's no reason to keep it around. So they just euthanized and culled all the animals that tested positive, I guess before I even went to school. It was a long time ago. So we were excited maybe we're going to see it. And that's why we pursued this. So I didn't set out trying to do a study on this. It just kind of fell into my lap, and I wanted to figure out what was going on.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of research is that way. And I really applaud you and your team for putting welfare first and saying, like, hey, we can't have this. We need to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. We're actually
great.
it's like, it's a testament to stubbornness, Jenny, because I was stubborn. I was like, okay, I want to figure out what's going on with this. Because if you haven't read the paper, it happened like 5 extra times after this. So it was like 11 pigs in a row were showing these signs. And we were just like, what's going on?
Right.
And
the
researchers just like stopped doing pig research. They were like, we don't want to like waste our time and waste the pig's welfare or any of these things. We have to like figure out what's going on.
Right.
And then it just kind of like disappeared. It went away on its own, which is frustrating, but I still wouldn't let it go. I was like, I have to figure out what is going on here. So I just kept pursuing every avenue. So the first rule out was malignant hyperthermia. They tested negative for that, so it couldn't be that. Then after that, I was looking through my textbooks, like reading all the ones. And I read Swine in the Laboratory by Dr. Swindle, the internationally renowned expert at all swine, at least when it comes to laboratory swine.
Yep.
And I looked in it, and like there's like one paragraph on the bottom of page 52 extending to the top of page 53 of his 3rd edition that talks about a condition that looks just like malignant hyperthermia, but it's not. They're going to test negative for it, but it looks just like it. Intraoperatively, you'll see hyperthermia, muscle rigidity, tachypnea, heart rate racing. You'll see all these things and you'll think it's that, but it's not that. And they don't really know what causes it. Like it talks about, let's see.
You have to run and get my Swindle book.
Yeah. If you look at the
library here, yeah.
So you memorize it like that, but it really sounds like this. So it says, let's see, hyperthermia occurring during surgery or the recovery period, check. Tends to occur in groups of farm animals that may be closely related. Okay, so we should have seen if they were related or not. It tends to pop up unexpectedly in pigs from a supplier who's been used for a long period of time without any prior incidents, and then it goes away all of a sudden without any intervention. That's a check for us because the same research group, over 4 protocols, they had bought 246 pigs from these guys and never seen it before. So that works. And then it says anecdotal information suggests a genetic predisposition. So we're like, okay, we need to see if these animals are closely related or not. But there's like no other answers in the book. It just says there's unknown pathogenesis. The only thing they can say definitively is that it is not malignant hyperthermia because it doesn't affect the ryanodine receptor 1. It's not the mutation that causes malignant hyperthermia. So they know it's not that, but it looks exactly like it. So I was like, okay, what do I do from here? So I basically contacted Swindle because he's very approachable. And every time I presented this at JAALAS and DACLAM forum, and I think he was at both of them, and I talked to him about it beforehand before we really fleshed things out. And he does a lab with the military every year. So I got to talk to him in person when it first started about what it was. And he was like, these are probably pigs that are related. It just goes away and you just ask the producer to give you unrelated pigs. So we kind of did that. We met with the producer and of course they were blaming us and we try not to blame them on purpose. And they said, okay, we'll look at our records to see if he's related. And we actually found like 2 of the 6 because we didn't wait till 11 before we started pursuing it. We started pursuing it at 6.
Yes,
and they said 2 of these are at least half siblings because they came from the same mom. So they were in the same litter. And I was like, okay. And they said, we can't tell who the dad is though, because we used pooled commercially purchased semen. So no one knows who the dad is, but they're at least half siblings. So maybe they were half siblings again or full siblings. We don't really know. I wish I could go find the company and test all their bores, but I wasn't able to do that.
Yes. Oh, it was so interesting and interesting how it came to be. And I'm just so glad, again, that you guys pursued for welfare purposes and just to be able to get this research going, back on track.
Oh, I forgot to mention, you asked me to introduce everybody. So
yeah, go ahead.
So Dr. Dan Nooneman, he actually joined our team later on because while I was asking everybody what happened to these 11 pigs, everything's going back now and everything's fine at our institution. I'm just trying to figure out what happened to those 11 pigs. And then someone was like, hey, I've heard there's another stress syndrome that the USDA discovered back in 2012 involving something called dystrophin protein. So here's a POC. You can contact the USDA for that. And I want to give a shout out to the people who pointed me in the right direction. They were colleagues, Dr. Lynn Miller and Dr. Alicia Caulfield. So if they listen to this, thanks guys for pointing me in the right direction.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it takes all of us, right? Somebody has a little tidbit of information to share and you're on your way.
I definitely don't deserve all the credit for this. So I contacted Dr. Dan Nooneman, and it turns out he's the one who wrote that paper 2012, and he's just as stubborn as me because it's in Nebraska. He's with the USDA's Agricultural Research Service, and there's a closed swine herd for research in Nebraska, and they were moving some young piglets maybe like a mile or two between farms or facilities or buildings on the farm. And like 2 piglets died. And he was like, why did they die while being transported? So he literally pursued this, and he's a geneticist. So he like discovered what protein it was. And it was the dystrophin protein that had a variation. He doesn't want me to call it mutant. I won't call it a mutation, Dan.
Okay.
Because he says like it's a difference between variation and mutation. And I'm sure I'll jumble it if I try to explain that. But he discovered this in 2012. And ever since, I don't know when he discovered a test for it, but he discovered a test sometime. And people have been sending him samples to be tested. Everybody thinks like they had this dystrophin variant. And he says like almost nobody does, and it's very rare. But he asked us to send a couple samples just for the heck of it. So we did. We sent him 3 samples, and 2 of them were positive. And he was like, oh my gosh, you guys, I never get positives. Send me some more.
Okay.
But by this time, these are all the pigs are normal. So we just sent him 3 samples for the heck of it from the same producer. So these are non-clinical pigs that are acting normal. So we sent it to him. They were positives. They're all females. And then he said, send us some more. So we sent him, let's see, in total, we sent him 56 asymptomatic pigs to be tested. And out of that, 22 out of 46, so almost 48% of them were positive female carriers. And remember, these are non-clinical animals. They're
right.
Which is crazy because he was
That is crazy.
He told us, he was like, this is extremely rare, Jimmy. He's like, we think that the dystrophin variant, it only ever talks about it really in his paper from 2012. And I think when I was writing this paper, they discovered one of the mutations in a Japanese slaughterhouse in 2019. But otherwise, it's like no one knows about this other stress syndrome. But he told me it's in 5% of landrace pigs. And you have landrace crosses, and you're getting like 48% in non-clinical females. And also, it's a sex-linked mutation, so I'd expect there to be more males. And we only sent him 10 males that were tested, and 2 of them were positive, so that's 20%. And if you're wondering why we didn't send more males, it's just because we didn't have any males. Like, we didn't set this out as like an experiment. These are just samples.
Yes, what you had. Yeah, that
and
makes sense.
It was 2 different research protocols that this happened with. And one of them was survival surgeries, and they used males, but they didn't do that many surgeries, so that's why we only had 10 samples. And the big research group, the one that Justin Hertzler, John Mayers are with, my 2 co-authors, they're the ones who did like the 246 pigs prior, and they all use females because it's just easier to catheterize females, and that's one of the things that they test.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we have so many females that we tested.
Got it.
Oh, I forgot to introduce David Burmeister too. He's our last author. He's like the godfather, the mentor to us all, because prior to this, I had only written 1 paper, and that was my MPH paper that I got to count for ACLAM board certification. He wasn't involved with these pigs, but all the pig people know each other here at this institution, and we work together. So I asked him for some guidance, and he agreed to like help make sure that everything made sense and to coordinate the paper and just kind of like watch over us all. So thank you, David.
It's time for a quick break to hear about the JAALAS Learning Library. Hey, are you ready to elevate your team's knowledge and skills in laboratory animal science? Well, the JAALAS Learning Library is your one-stop solution for comprehensive training. With courses designed for everyone, you can train your entire team in one place, earn valuable JAALAS CEUs and RACE CE credits, and take advantage of group discounts to maximize that investment. Getting started is easy too. Sign up for free to access select courses instantly to explore a vast library of resources. Empower your team, stay ahead of the field, and grow with the JAALAS Learning Library, your trusted resource for laboratory animal science professionals. Oh, I love that. I just love hearing what everybody does on a paper because everybody does something really unique. And I love the fact, again, that you guys were just so concerned about these pigs and their welfare and, that you can get the data and, all the things that as lab animal veterinarians and IA cooks and all the things that we care about, all going for that welfare. And so I really appreciate that. And I appreciate your persistence and, all you guys working together for the pigs. All right. So let's jump in here. You covered a lot of your introduction already, which I think is so important, especially folks that may have learned malignant hypothermia or the porcine stress syndrome. Now maybe this. So I love how you covered that. What was the hypothesis of your paper?
Well, I'll give you both. I'll give you the hypothesis that we wrote about and then the one that I was hoping for that didn't pan out.
That's okay. Yeah.
So the hypothesis, we were saying, okay, we already have some positives here. Let's test a bunch of more for like 4 more months. We'll test all the samples we can. And we're just thinking that we're going to have a higher incidence of this dystrophin variant than expected over this 4-month period. And that was true because we found so many more. I mean, we expected like 5% or less, depending on
Right.
how much you want to count the land race into land race cross. So way more than we expected. So that was true. But not everything happened at once. This took a very long time, and we found out more information as we went along. So when we looped Dan into it and we heard about his syndrome, we thought, okay, well, the signalment doesn't really match because the dystrophin variant in 2012, when he discovered it, it was only affecting really young piglets. So it was talking about they were piglets like 8 to 12 weeks of age, and they showed clinical signs within like 30 seconds of exposure to isoflurane. And after a couple minutes, the clinical signs were so bad they had to be euthanized. And we're talking about adult pigs here that take like 4 hours and have clinical signs that get bad, but they don't happen within minutes. It takes a long time. Sometimes like 10, 12 hours or plus. But before we were able to test some of the pigs, we tested some of them, but not all of them. I was like, I wonder if we can tie these all together. Like maybe what we're seeing is the adult version of the dystrophin variant, which Dan kind of thought, that could be possible. Like maybe if they survive long enough, like they don't die from transport, they get more robust, and then they only like start showing signs when they're exposed to actual isoflurane when they're older. So maybe it takes a lot longer. And then I asked Dr. Swindle, and one of the many times I just kind of like surprised him when I would see him. I was like, do you think that the dystrophin variant could be related to this like mysterious unnamed thing you talk about in page 52 to 53?
I love that. I love it.
And he was like, you know what? It might. He was like, yeah, like you might as well like pursue it. So I definitely pursued it.
Interesting.
So when I found out about the dystrophin variant and we were getting positives, we hadn't tested the clinical pigs yet. We only tested the asymptomatic symptoms. I'm not supposed to say asymptomatic because one of the reviewers was like, symptomatic only refers to humans. These are non-clinical. I'm like, okay, whatever, dude.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you for that.
He got really mad at me about that. So the ones that didn't have any clinical signs. So I was thinking the whole time, I wish we could test the clinical ones, but we didn't know about this dystrophin variant or Meet Dan or any of this stuff until after they were already like euthanized and the body's disposed of. So I was thinking, you know what? I bet this is like dystrophin related. And I bet if we could test these pigs, they would all be symptomatic and they'd all be positive for dystrophin. So I even like made up a new acronym at the time. I was like, we're going to call it DIPS, dystrophin-induced porcine stress syndrome.
Okay.
And that's what I presented at like ALAS and ACLAM forum about because that was what we thought it was. And then John Mayer's group, the first group that had the problem that alerted us to this, they actually found, I don't want to say archived, but they found samples of 7 of the original 11 pigs. They found samples that were like, they had muscle tissue that was preserved in paraffin. So they talked to Dan and they're like, hey, I know this isn't whole blood, but can we use this tissue maybe to try to get results? And can you extract it from the paraffin or is that going to make everything bad? And Dan is like a wizard, so he was able to actually do that. So they were actually able to test 7 samples. We didn't have samples from all the rest of them, but they found 7 of them. And as I waited for the results, I was thinking, oh, it's going to be 7 for 7. I've discovered something cool. And then it was only 2 for 7, which is a disappointment, but it's something at least. So we think dystrophin plays a role, but it's not the only role. So that was our unofficial hypothesis that was proven wrong.
Yeah. Oh, no, I love that. And I just love hearing this is such a mystery. And I love it. So we're getting mystery theater here and the research. I love it.
Have you ever encountered it, Jen?
Only once. And that's why I'll never forget dantrolene because I was an anesthesia resident. This is old school, but we had pagers at Michigan State. And I just remember the pager, and you wear your pager around, anyone can hear anything. And I just remember the head of our section yelling, "Get the dantrolene!" And so I've just never forgotten that. I don't even know if dantrolene is still, any type of an antidote.
We tried it. Yeah, we actually tried.
I'll never forget that.
After the first 6, everybody was like, it's definitely malignant hypothermia. And I was like, I don't know, guys, it's testing negative. But none of them were vets. So they really wanted it to be malignant hypothermia. So they bought some dantrolene, but we didn't really know much about it. So
yeah.
I don't know.
It's expensive, or at least I know it used to be.
Well, the ones that they found, the one that they found was like $1,300 for like a little vial.
That tracks.
They didn't use it beforehand when they used their next pig because they were like, oh, what if we don't need it?
Right.
And so they waited till they saw clinical signs and they only used like the half the dose. So it didn't work, but we don't know if like it didn't work because we used it incorrectly or if dantrolene only works for malignant hypothermia or if it'll work for any kind of stress syndrome. So that's something that future studies are going to have to look at.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's cool that you used dantrolene. Did it work?
Gosh, okay, this was a long time ago. I believe it did enough to get us, and this, again, vet school, so this is somebody's pig, producer probably. But yeah, I believe it did, or at least bought us enough time to figure out what to do next. And I
Nice.
got to go back and remember what that was about. But yeah, it was a long time ago.
We have some now. We have some that we used.
I'm sure you do.
We used some a couple weeks ago when we had a couple mini pigs. We had a Sinclair and a Gottingen that seemed to get hot afterwards, and we had to use like cold compresses and stuff to cool them down. They both survived, but those are our new residents, and they used some dantrolene and said it worked really well. So I told them that they can write up a paper and I'll advise them in the future. But
oh, and those are, I mean, just as an aside, for JAALAS, like those are great case studies we'd love to see in JAALAS because the one-offs like that are how everybody learns.
Especially because we've never, I mean, the textbook definition says that malignant hyperthermia is not supposed to affect miniature breeds. So that would be like a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. Actually, we would love to see that case report. Please send that in.
I'll see if I can get them to do it. I told them I won't write it up because it took me like years just to write this one up.
Yeah, no, tell them no stress, but we'd love to see it.
But I definitely want to jump in and say that that's why I asked if you saw it or not, because when I presented this finding, we did a local called the National Capital Area branch of ALAS, so like a local group. I presented it there for like, what's your diagnosis while I was a resident? And people came up afterwards was like, I know so-and-so who saw this, or I saw this too, and it went away, but we just forgot about it. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, cool. And then that same thing happened at ALAS and ACLAM Forum. Like everywhere I've gone and presented it, people were like, yeah, we saw this, but then it went away. So we just like ignored it because, you have other things to do.
Yeah. And if you work with pigs enough, like that quantity, like you said, you're going to
That's what I want. I want people to like report it so that we can figure out, hey, can we develop a actual like test for this? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's already Dan's test for the dystrophin variant, but we know that doesn't describe everything. If we could figure out a genetic basis for these, kind of like we did with malignant hyperthermia, that would be awesome for animal welfare and for just research efficiency in general.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I highly recommend that. All right, let's get back to this paper. We talked a lot about the study. Could you tell us maybe a little bit more about the design? Was there anything in the design of the study? It sounds like it kind of just organically came together historically. And then we'd love, obviously, to know the results.
Yeah, we didn't have any study design. If you look at it, you'd be like, why did he only have this many?
Yeah, no, I get it.
We didn't have a power analysis. We were literally trying to do a case series so that we can describe something cool. And then it kind of morphed into a quasi study where we're like, oh, we're getting all these things. So if I would have planned it, was also kind of hard to plan because you have to buy animals just to like test them.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a little haphazard because it kind of turned into something. Once we heard about the dystrophin variant and saw all of our positives, it turned into, okay, can this help explain anything? And if not, let's just put it out there for everybody to read.
No, that's okay. We appreciate it. And I think that's why I asked you to come on today, because I feel like this is such great information that needs to get out there. And I just want to make sure that we're giving you that opportunity. Okay. So you kind of gone through all of that. What about in your discussion? Like you've got a lot of really good information there. I know we've talked about a lot of it, but have at it. Tell us what we don't know yet.
Well, the first thing is I got tired of trying to explain to everybody. It looks like malignant hyperthermia, but it's not. It's described on these 2 pages in this book. Like I got tired of saying all these things because nobody named it. So that's why I consulted with like us authors got together and tried to figure out an acronym that would be easy to say. That way we wouldn't have to waste precious time explaining what it was. So that's where VAPS came from. And we actually tried to call it GAPS, like gaseous anesthesia, but then they're like, it's not gas, it's vapor. And I was like, you're right. So that's why it's volatile anesthesia. Yeah. So that's where that came from. I think the take home message is that not everything that looks like malignant hyperthermia is it. Malignant hyperthermia is not the end all be all. There's other things out there. We have to figure out what it is to try to help animal welfare.
Yeah.
These pigs, even though they're knocked out, we don't know how much they're suffering internally. And then if this is related to dystrophin at all, like Dan said, some of these pigs would have trouble when they're getting just like, they would start acting like if they're transported or if they're getting like hoof trimmed or whatever or not, or just handled, some of these animals will have stress syndromes. So it's not always anesthesia related. It's just it's easier to test with anesthesia. Yeah,
I think that's really important. I really appreciate you sharing that bit as well, because I definitely remember that reading the paper as well. I was like, wow, there's like, other triggers perhaps. And of course, with your background, I just wonder, does this have any correlation or relation to anything in human medicine, like from a One Health perspective? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize, as animal-centric as I am, I didn't realize that humans got malignant hyperthermia until I started researching. And I was like, oh, I guess we use pigs as like a model for that.
Yeah, I did remember that from residency. But boy, when I read your paper, I could not remember like how many people does that affect? How does it happen? All those types of things I couldn't remember. I remembered the dantrolene. That's about it.
I'm impressed, Jenny.
Yeah. Hey, there's always 1 or 2 things that get stuck back in that brain of yours, and
I presented this morning to our journal club for residents in the Army, this paper. And I told them, I was like, every mock board I've ever taken has asked about malignant hyperthermia. And I was like,
Yes.
it's probably actually been in every ACLAM exam too, because
Yes.
it was discovered in 1953, and ACLAM, as you guys all know for studying, was made
Yep.
in 1957. So
Yeah.
it was afterwards.
Yep. You're on the hook to know that. Yep. And probably you're on the hook to know dantrolene. I've
Yeah.
said it enough
Mhm.
times today that hopefully people won't forget.
I guess I kind of got sidetracked. So the conclusions from the discussion is that this dystrophin variant is supposed to be rare, but we were getting much higher than expected. It may play a role, but we know that it's not the end all be all. It's not as simple as one gene causes these clinical signs, because 2 out of the 7 symptomatic pigs actually showed that, whereas 5 out of 7 didn't. And a lot of them that we had 48% asymptomatic ones. So that doesn't, just because you have the dystrophin variant doesn't mean you're going to have a stress syndrome. There's more to it when it comes to genetics. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as I was hoping.
Right. Right. And it certainly makes you wonder, like you said, the other stressors, other
Mhm.
anesthetic agents, even. Yeah. Interesting. I love it. Okay. We are getting to the end, which I'm sorry because I feel like we could just chat all day. Let's see. We always ask one final question of our guests, and you have been such a fun guest.
Thank you.
I'm not going to throw you a curveball. I'm just going to ask you a regular, straight up question. What advice would you give to somebody that's just kind of starting out and is like, gosh, I'm going to be, anesthetizing pigs. I'm new at this. What kinds of things should this person know?
Oh, that's an easy question. Thank you for asking it. So while it's easy to give advice, it's hard to actually do pig anesthesia, because anybody who's done it knows it's difficult to intubate a pig. You have to practice a lot. It's not as simple as like we're used to with big German Shepherd dogs in the military. We start off as normal
Yeah.
general practitioners before we specialize in the military. So we're used to those working dogs, and it's like shooting a basketball. It's pretty easy to put that tube down. But with pigs, it's not. You'll learn all the different reasons why, but they have like blind diverticulums. So like they have like little pouches that kind of hide, and sometimes you can't even see what you're doing. So make sure you test everything out, whether you have one of the BAM whistles that screams when it blows out, or you have end tidal CO2, checking to make sure that you're actually getting a CO2 reading when they're breathing. It's very common for people to mess up the intubation. Additionally, Dr. Swindle will be happy that I'm saying this. Don't use tilazole or xylazine. They're not very good for pigs. Tilazole can lead to violent recovery, so Dr. Swindle doesn't like using it. And our guys were actually using that when they had these original symptoms. So maybe that played a role. I got them to stop it. Another thing that I don't know if I was really successful at this or not, but I'm telling everybody, don't inject them in the rump. People think, oh, I should inject the pre-meds into the butt because the pig's running away. I don't want to freak them out. And it's actually the opposite. You should put it in the neck, because they have such fat necks that you're really going to get sub-Q. It's kind of hard to get intramuscular, but which is fine. Like Dr. Swindle says, just put it in the neck. That's going to cause them less stress. Use a butterfly catheter technique so you don't have to actually worry about a needle and them staying still, because they're not going to stay still. So kind of like tap them on the neck a couple times with your finger. And then on like the third one, that's when you use the butterfly catheter to push it in there and then give them their meds. And that's a lot less stressful, because you don't want to stress them out. Our guys were definitely putting it in the butt. I could tell because I would see like blood on the hindquarters afterwards.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So unless you've got a really good reason not to put it in the neck, put it in the neck. That'll lead to less stressful. Avoid tilazole, avoid xylazine. And then we don't know enough about VAPs to really say like whether dantrolene will work or not. And like you said, it's expensive. After I presented, some people were like, hey, you can do it orally. That's probably cheaper than the injectable. So look into that.
Yeah. Good advice.
I know we don't have that much money in research. Like, we can't just like go buying things. But so if you don't want to buy dantrolene, it's really cheap just to get just have ways to cool a pig down. So ice baths, just ice in plastic bags so you can rub it on the pigs. That's what we were doing a couple of weeks ago, and it cooled the pigs down. As soon as you notice this thing happening, you have to turn off whatever anesthetic you're using, give them straight up oxygen, and try to cool them down. If you can have portable AC units or fans, that's even better too. Those are things that you can easily have in your lab to respond should they start getting hypothermic. And then lastly, above all, please report any abnormal responses to anesthesia. So like I said before, let's try to see if we can find if there's a genetic basis for VAPs or multiple genetic bases, and develop some tests so that we can try to actually get rid of it like we got rid of malignant hypothermia.
Wow. That was excellent. I loved your answer. That was probably the best answer to a summary advice question I've given. I really love that. Really well thought out.
I practiced that. I try to answer all your questions at lunchtime.
Hey, you did a good job. You did a great job on that. I just love that comprehensive answer, because you're right. It's a little tricky to anesthetize a pig, but lots of people, you got to start somewhere. So I really love that advice, especially your last point. I think sometimes we get so busy that we forget that sometimes the really tricky cases and the things that we all learn from, we kind of forget to share. Just, you're thankful to make it through that one. And we just kind of forget to share that with our colleagues. And so another plug for shameless plug for JAALAS is we want to see these cases, you guys. It's how we all learn. And then I'm going to dub Jimmy as the guy to call. If you see this, his info will be in the show notes. Reach out, just like he did with Dr. Swindell. So, it takes all of us to figure out what's happening. So we really appreciate that sense of camaraderie. And
thanks, Jenny. I just realized that I'm actually going to PCS, which is permanent change station in the military, where you move to a new job. And I think I'm going to lose this email. So if you want to email me and my civilian professional email, it's drjimmycorrigan@gmail.com.
Perfect. Oh, thank you. We're going to get that in the show notes because,
awesome.
You're going to have somebody that reaches out that says, hey, this is happening. Oh, I love talking to you. Thank you so much. Thanks. This was a good way to end the week.
It's funny because my residence mates were like, I've been telling people, I just want to get this paper done. I've been working for years on it. Like, I actually wrote the rough draft in January 2023, thinking like it would be finally done. And they're like, after it gets published, you're going to be like the pig guy when it comes to like non-malignant hypothermia. And I was like, I guess you're right. So I better I'll never be free of it, but it's okay.
No, you won't be. You are dubbed the VAPS pig guy for sure. That's okay. Well, I this has been so much fun. And I just appreciate your diligence in tracking this down, because a lot of people would have just been like, okay, moving on. But really, you really sleuthed it out. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. Sometimes I feel guilty because I'm like, I didn't discover this. Swindell wrote about it in 1990s. And but just nobody ever bothered to do anything about it.
Well, you never know. Next iteration of that book might have page 53. That column might be a little bit bigger now, thanks to you. So
if I got cited, that'd be like the ultimate reward. I'd be like on cloud 9.
Right. Well, you deserve it. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was fun.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Last Word. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to leave your feedback in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more great content. We encourage you to submit your research manuscripts to our journals, JAALAS and LAS Pro. We're always looking to feature impactful studies. You can also connect with us on our social media channels or email us directly at info@alas.org. We appreciate your listening today, and we'll see you next time on The Last Word, an ALAS podcast. Until then, stay curious and stay connected.